to go. Here's Jacobs on the quarterback sneak, and he finds a hole, but he fumbles, and Argonauts recover on the Winnipeg 19.
A dramatic climax to the first overtime Grey Cup game.
McQuaid, sweeping left, slips, fumbles the ball. Reggie Holmes recovers for Calgary.
Welcome to Classic Grey Cups on ESPN Classic Canada. I'm John Wells along with Chris Schultz as we look back at several wonderful eras in Canadian football. And Chris, there have been more than a few.
Yes, there have been, John. And what I like about it is it develops that one word which means tradition. You put all those eras together, you look at the history, you see all these Grey Cup games. They were played by championship athletes in all kinds of weather conditions. Sometimes you had teams with winning records. Sometimes you had teams with losing records. But they developed their personalities, and all those games were very entertaining and very well played, John.
First up, the 50s, and a look back at the Mud Bowl in 1950 and a classic battle between the Blue Bombers and the Tiger Cats in 1953. That was the beginning of a new era in the CFL, with live television coverage of the Grey Cup for the very first time in 1953. Chris?
Well, thank God for that. That means you and I were employed. You know, I'm glad it was on TV. I'm a big believer that you have to expose this product to everyone across Canada. And that was the beginning point of taking the game and letting everyone realize what a solid game this is in the Canadian Football League at the championship level. That was a turning point in the league's history, John. 1953
was Jake Goddar's final game with the Tiger Cats, and it was a year he wasn't even expected to play. As for the Mud Bowl in 1950, a great friend of Chris's joins us to look back at that game a little bit later. But right now, back to Varsity Stadium in Toronto and the kickoff of Grey Cup Week 1950.
Championship was played in Toronto's Varsity Stadium before the largest crowd in the history of Canadian football. 27,050 looked on to break the 1949 record of 21,000. The difference was supplied by the extra space in the enlarged and remodeled Varsity Stadium. But even with the extra seats, the demand for tickets was as great as ever. Many 1950 customers recalled the weather conditions of the previous year. Montreal's Freddie Kiak found out for himself as Montreal Alouettes defeated Calgary on a gridiron covered with snow and ice. An added snowfall on the eve of that game left a slippery, partially frozen turf, footing to say the least. But those who thought the 1949 conditions were bad didn't know what really bad conditions were. While 1950 brought more customers, it also brought much more mud. A heavy fall of snow and an unexpected thaw the morning of the game left a sloshy field of mud, water, and slush. The 1950 finalists, Toronto Argonauts and Winnipeg Blue Bombers, played on one of the worst fields in history. The Bombers came from Winnipeg with the reputation of being the strongest Western contender of all time. As they warmed up with the wet, muddy ball, Eastern eyes looked with interest at the highly rated Winnipeg quarterback, 31-year-old Indian Jack Jacobs, former Green Bay Packers professional. In his first year of Canadian football, the top choice for all Canadian quarterbacks. Under coach Butch Larson, former All-American end with Minnesota, Bombers rose from last place in 1949 to Western champions in 1950. Their key men included Buddy Tinsley, former Green Bay tackle, and speedy Tom Casey, another ex-pro and a sensation with Hamilton Wildcats the previous year. These Bombers dominated Western football from the start of their season to their triumph in the final against Edmonton. In this play, it was Jacobs to Strappa to Ford for a Winnipeg touchdown as they won the Western Canadian title. Opposing them are the Eastern Cinderella team. A poor third in 1949's Big Four race, Eastern champions in 1950. Toronto Argonauts completely reorganized between seasons, but some of the old team remained, including veteran Joe Crow, one of the game's finest kickers. Studious Frank Clare came to Toronto from Buffalo University to coach the revamped 1950 Argonauts. Cornell star Al Dectebrun, former pro with New York Yankees, joined Argos from Hamilton Wildcats to become the Toronto quarterback. And with Dectebrun the key man, the Argos built a powerful offensive that won them the Eastern title. Under the new order, the old Argo wing formation that won them Grey Cups in 1945, 46, and 47, but failed in 48 and 49, was tossed up. They switched to the currently popular T formation, and they combined deception with speed as Frank Clare put together their 1950 powerhouse, which beat out Ottawa and Montreal for the second playoff berth. Argos also broke a long-standing tradition and introduced United States imports to their lineup. Americans, such as hard-running Ulysses Curtis, provided much of the power in their highly respected and versatile offensive. In the Big Four playoff, Argos met the powerful Hamilton Tiger Cats, who finished the regular season in first place. In the first game in Hamilton, the Tiger Cats rang up a 2-point margin to carry over on the round. Here, early in the second game, a short Dectebrun pass to end Stretch Whaley put Toronto in the lead. The accurate Toronto-born Nick Volpe added to the margin with a perfectly kicked field goal from a difficult angle. Then Dectebrun threw another pass, this one to former Toronto varsity star Ted Toogood. It was the second Argo touchdown, and Scullers ran up an overwhelming lead against the desperate Hamilton Tiger Cats. The final Toronto touchdown was scored by Bob Westlake, mid-season replacement for Billy Bass, who was out with a broken back. Westlake ran around left end with a great burst of speed and went 33 yards. And Toronto won the two-game total point final 35-19.
By Ascot, and it's a short ball. It goes into the mud on the far side, taken by Ian Gibby, picks it up, and he is down. There's a pile of players. He was stopped by...
Early in the first quarter, after a quick kick to Tommy Ford, it's Winnipeg's ball on the Argos 47.
Right, he cuts in, and he picks up about 7 yards before he is thrown in a touch by Bud Fowler. Nick Volpe and Jacobs is in semi-kick formation. Here's back. Going to be a pass. Takes plenty of time. It's a long one on the far side, and it's intercepted by the Argos. It's intercepted by Scott, and he is down his... by Stocks, Arnie Stocks, intercepted that pass, and the playing wide. First and 10, and it's Dectebrun on a quarterback sneak, and he finds a big hole. He goes for 5, he goes for 10 yards, and he is down on the 50-yard line.
Toogood is tossed for a 5-yard loss by Tinsley next, and it's second down and 15 to go.
5-3 defense, and the pitch out on the far side to Curtis. He fades off to his right, and he's on the 45, he's on the 50, and he is pulled down on about the 55-yard line. Goes to a first down. And Joe Kroll is back to do the kicking. He's back in his own 46. There's the kick. And it's a soggy ball. It's coming down to Tommy Ford. Ford lets it roll to his 10. He's on the 10. He cuts into touch on about the 12. And it'll be first and 10 for the Bombers. And in motion to the left is Tommy Ford. And the handoff is to Johnny Strappa. And there was no hole there by Fred Black. Moved in there to fill in. And there's no gain on the play. Volpe is dropping deep. And it's second and 10. There's the snap. There's the kick. It was almost blocked. And it's coming down in Bomber territory. Rolls the 55. And Volpe has it. He moves right up the middle, and he is hit by Ian Gibb. And it's first and 10 for the Argos.
Nick Volpe, the longest-serving Argo ever, was there in 1950. He was a kicker, a safety, a punt returner, and a backup quarterback. We just saw you on a punt return, Nick. How difficult was it to accomplish that on that Saturday afternoon?
Well, I'll tell you, John, it was so difficult that you couldn't catch the ball. So Teddy Toogood and I were experimenting pre-game, and we decided we couldn't catch it. So why don't we just let it hit the ground, because it would just splat, pick it up and run with it. And that's what we decided to do.
Let me ask you this, Nick. The morning of the game, right, you get up, you know, you're checking out the weather conditions, you leave your hotel. What were you thinking when you saw the surface you guys were playing on?
Well, we went out there, and it was 6 inches of snow.
Snow?
It was snow.
Wow.
And it got mild, and the snow turned to slush.
Right.
And they decided, well, we better shovel this off. Well, they couldn't shovel it. It was too heavy and it'd take them forever. So they got little bulldozers and they pushed all the snow off the field.
Right.
But by doing that, they churned up the field and it was just a quagmire. It was mud and you couldn't see any lines.
No lines.
No lines.
So you didn't know, like, during the game when you had to check for the first down, you had to go by the chains and the markers and...
Exactly. The officials, one official had to be at the sideline determining whether it was a first down or not.
Wow.
So
Nick, how different were pregame preparations back in 1950?
We went through the same kind of routines. You know, you were catching punts and the offense would run the ball and then the defense would practice their particular drills. So I wouldn't say it was that different.
Was it more difficult being a kicker in that 1950 Grey Cup or a returner or a safety for footing and all of that?
Well, personally, I thought it was more difficult being a kicker because I had difficulty getting the ball out of the mud, and that was very hard to do. And we didn't kick very long field goals in those days, you know, 20 to 30 yards, that was just about it.
Yeah, but you had 2 field goals in the game, one for 21 yards and one for 29 yards. Now, I got to ask your technique in the game, because usually if there's some snow or something, they brush off the snow. But this was like water on top of the field.
No,
well,
this was mud.
This was mud. So what did you do to try to get your plant foot to make sure you could distribute your weight and make the kick?
Well, I used to have a piece of tape, a square piece of tape that I'd keep in my belt, and I'd give it to the holder, and he'd brush down the mud, put the tape, so I knew where to plant my foot beside that piece of tape and then kick.
But I have this image. I have this image of you making the kick and then falling right on your back. That didn't happen, did it?
No, it didn't happen.
Just how big was this game, the Grey Cup 1950 at Varsity?
Well, it was sold out, and you know, Varsity Stadium was the place to have Grey Cups, and it was packed at all times. How big was it? You know, probably as big or bigger than today. No doubt about it.
Of the 3 areas of the football, did you find one of them had an advantage? Like, were the defenses playing better in the game? Were the offenses able to move the football? Or was it the type of thing where it was just like you gained 10 yards and that was like 50 yards in a regular game because of the conditions?
You were happy
Yeah.
to run the ball and gain first down. Couldn't throw the ball very well.
Yeah.
But I think we've all heard about the thumbtacks. Al Dechterman was experimenting, trying to throw the ball prior to the game,
Right.
and he couldn't do it. So he went inside and talked to the trainer, and they decided, well, let's put some thumbtacks on your hand, and we'll put some tape over it. And so the little points of the tacks were
That made a
sticking up,
difference? You could
and
grab-
he could hang on to the ball.
Really?
And everybody couldn't understand while Deck could hang on to the ball and throw it, and poor old Indian Jack was fumbling the ball all over the place.
But you had to guard against deflating the football with the tackle around too, right?
It wasn't that bad, no.
How big was it to represent Toronto in a Grey Cup game at Varsity?
That was a thrill of a lifetime. There's no doubt about it. Football was so important in those days, probably, as you know, a lot more important than it seems to be today. It was a thrill.
Now, when you played at Varsity and the stadium no longer exists, was that difficult for you, Nick? Because it was a part of history in the Toronto area, part of history in Canada, and it's part of your past.
I played college ball at the University of Toronto at
Right.
Varsity Stadium. I played my pro there with Argos, and I coached Port Credit, and we used to have championship games at Varsity Stadium. So Varsity Stadium was the place to play. It was great.
We'll get back to more from Nick Volpe in just a moment. Right now, let's get back to the 1950 Grey Cup at Varsity in Toronto.
Coach Frank Clare uses that 2-platoon system.
The Argos gained 2 yards in 2 plays, and then
Kroll is back to do the kicking, almost at midfield. There's the snap, and he gets the kick away. It's a nice spiral ball coming to Casey. Over his own goal line, he gets one away from Casey, and he concedes a point in the score. It's Toronto Argonauts 1, Winnipeg Blue Bombers nothing on Joe Kroll's long kick into the end zone.
3 plays later, Toronto are on the move again.
And it's Ulysses Curtis on a quarterback sneak, and I think he made it. Although the line held, Al Dechterman on a quarterback sneak. Buddy Tinsley, captain, looks it over and calls for the arch stick. And it is first down for the Toronto Argonauts. First down for the Argos. And it's Deckerman. The handoff to Too Good on that similar play. He finds a hole over left tackle. Goes for 5, 10, and 15. A gain of about 17 yards. Ted Too Good cuts in over left tackle and finally stopped by Jim McPherson.
And so the quarter ends. Toronto 1, Winnipeg nothing.
First down, Jack Jacobs looks around, sends a man in motion to the right. It's Tommy Ford. They have 2 men wide to the right in their spread formation. And it's Jacobs fading back for a pass, and it's over-centered. It's good. He's coming up to the 30-yard line. Joe Aguirre. Jacobs gets it, and he is brought down for a loss as he turned around on the 25, and there may be a fumble. We'll see. He fumbled the ball, and Argonauts recovered. Westlake
Caught with his defensive team on the field, Deckerman carried the ball for 1 yard on a quarterback sneak.
Pitch is out, and it is a plunge off tackle to the left by Ulysses Curtis. Took a pitch out from Deckerman. There the snap to him. School drops the ball, starts to run with it, and he's going down. He's down to the 25, down to the 20, down to the 15-yard line for Joe Kroll around the left end, where he is sending a touch. Deckerman running himself over to this side, and he can't get through. He is rolling a bit, and we'll see where they place the ball.
But again, Argos are stopped, and they elect to try a field goal from the 21-yard line.
And it is right through the center, good for 3 points. So Argonauts are out in front of this ball game now by a score of 4-0. A kick by Joe Kroll.
2 plays later, a Winnipeg kick produces the game's most unusual moment.
Line. Almost midway between the sidelines. The snap to him is good. He gets the kick away, and it's very high. Not too long. Coming down here, and it hits the official right on the head. Cliff Roseborough, the Winnipeg official.
Then, after an exchange of kicks, it's Toronto's first down on their own 45.
He's back and gives it to Westlake. Westlake right through the center for a big gain. He's still going, and he fumbles, and Winnipeg, they have recovered. Tommy Ford.
But Winnipeg failed to gain, and now it's Toronto's first down on their own 40.
Recovered. Deckerman wipes off his hands on that towel that he's carrying with him, ready to get the ball. He does, and he gives a pitch out to Too Good running around the left end, gets away from one, a beautiful block there, and Too Good can't get away. He's away from the other one temporarily, down to the 45. The tacklers were sliding, and so was Too Good. They brought down all of them over on the far touchline. Man in motion is Curtis to the right. Deckerman gives it on the handoff right through center, and Billy Bass still going down to the Winnipeg 45-yard line. Billy Bass, Ian Gibbs made the tackle. Billy Bass cuts through center on a quick opening play. Deckerman gives the handoff, and it's Bass again, and Bass goes down to the 37-yard line. Slides through that water and mud. Deckerman looks around, no man in motion. He gets the ball, gives it on a pitch back. This way to Curtis. Curtis trying to get away. He's brought down. He can't get away. The Winnipeg tacklers are around him. He's still struggling, but he is brought down on the 37. And a player is hurt over in that pool of water. We haven't as yet been able to identify the player for you. It may be Buddy Tinsley. It is Buddy Tinsley.
One of the legends of the Mud Bowl in 1950, Winnipeg tackle Buddy Tinsley. He was knocked unconscious during the game, and legend has it, he almost drowned in a puddle at Varsity. How do you remember this?
Well, I remember one of their players lying face down in the mud, and I was very close to Heck Creighton at the time, and Heck was the referee, and we walked over to him, and Heck rolled him over. I don't know whether he would have drowned, but certainly it wasn't very uncomfortable, very comfortable with his face in the mud.
Now, did you guys know, Nick, what was going on at that time? Like, did you have an awareness that this guy needed some help, that this may be an emergency situation?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, his face was down in the mud.
And he wasn't moving at all, was he?
No, he was out cold.
Now, were there puddles all over the field, or was this actual mud that he was in?
It was mud. There weren't many puddles because, you know, the snow was pushed off, and there was the odd puddle here and there, but not as though it had rained.
But did they have to carry him off the field? Like, did he gain consciousness later?
He came to.
Right, he came to. So he was able to get on his feet and actually physically take himself off the field, yes.
Yeah.
Was it more myth than fact, as we hear this story related?
I would think so. You know, I've heard so many people say, geez, he would have drowned. Well, being there, I don't think he would have drowned.
I think if he'd laid there long enough, somebody would have found him. I mean, the play would have moved down the field, and they said, wait, we're missing something back here. We're missing our
Where's our
offensive lineman. Yeah, they would have noticed.
That's right.
Well, maybe that myth is dispelled. Let's get back to the 50 Grey Cup at Varsity in Toronto.
2nd and 6 to go. Here's Jacobs on a quarterback sneak, and he finds a hole, but he fumbles, and Argonauts recover on the Winnipeg 19. A bad break. Deckerman looks around, ready to get the ball from Hirsch. He does, and he gives it for a plunge right through center. One man wide to the right. Jack Jacobs. Here come Argonauts. Deckerman gives it for running play to the left for Too Good. Too Good is brought down from behind on the 15-yard line. Too Good. Going to try this one. The ball is placed for him. Volpe kicks, and it is good. It's good. The second field goal for Nick Volpe. And Tommy Ford is still running, trying to get it out. He wasn't sure, didn't see the signal apparently.
Nick Volpe's field goal just before halftime had given the Argos a 6-0 lead. What was the feeling in the dressing room at that time?
Well, we felt a lot better at halftime than we did prior to the game because we were underdogs. And Indian Jack Jacobs, we'd heard so much about how great this guy was, and we went out and proved that he wasn't as great as everybody thought, basically because he couldn't handle the ball and couldn't throw it.
So what was the secret to controlling Jacobs in the first half?
I don't know whether there was any secret. It was just good, hard, tough football.
Nick, talk to me a little bit about the plays, because at halftime teams adjust plays. So as the game progressed, did you have to throw out certain plays and then get really down to the basics of the game?
Yes, we certainly got rid of all our long pass plays, and we couldn't complete them. We ran the ball pretty well. Yuli Curtis and Teddy Too Good were pretty good halfbacks, and they did a good job.
Any thoughts looking back to remember what Frank Clare had said to you guys at halftime?
Frank never really got too excited and too emotional. He wasn't the type of a guy that gave you a pep talk. I think the worst thing he ever did was take his hat off and throw it down and and get a little excited. Frank, during a game, and I hope he won't mind me saying this, was really out of it. Monday to Friday, he was an outstanding coach. On Saturday, he'd leave it up to us to substitute and do what had to be done, because he was just a bystander at that time.
Now, what were you doing at halftime, Nick? You went into the locker room, you had all this mud on top of you. What were you thinking as a player? Were you looking forward to the second half, or was it the type of thing, hey, I'm going to survive the second half of football and hopefully we can win the game?
Well, there's no doubt that each one of us felt pretty good about the score at that time, and that we did have a lead. I'm not sure that we analyzed it that
deeply.
I mean, we had another 30 minutes to go, and we were going to do our darndest to see if we could win that game.
So, Nick, you feel good. You're up by 6 points. Are you a confident team heading into the second half? Do you feel that this one is really in your hands in front of a hometown crowd?
I think we felt pretty good, John. We knew that we could stop them, and if we could, maybe score again, that we'd be able to win that game. And they had some pretty good running backs too. And this Lee McPhail broke away from scrimmage. I guess it was the other side of the 50-yard line.
Right.
And I chased him from my spot and caught him on about 15, and they didn't score.
Right.
But looking at it on tape, it felt like it was slow motion. I mean, you're chugging through the mud, and I guess it wasn't too slow because I eventually caught him. But that was the kind of a game it was.
That Winnipeg team had a pretty good offense. I mean, you guys had to, it was their speed and their ability. So in some ways it evened it out. And did you think it helped you in terms of playing against Winnipeg's offense?
Yeah, I really do.
Yeah.
I think it did, because they were favored, and certainly we beat them 13-0. So that's not bad.
Any other plays that stand out in your memory from the first half?
Just that one play where I caught him. Yuli Curtis and Teddy Too Good ran the ball well, and in that mud, I think that was exceptional.
All right, let's get back to the game in the second half of the 1950 Grey Cup at Varsity Stadium in Toronto.
Midway through the third quarter, Winnipeg succeeds where all others had failed this season.
The ends are playing wide. There's the snap. It's a slow snap, and it's blocked. There's a match scramble for the ball. And it's a case of Button. Who's got the button? Kroll's kick has been blocked. And it's recovered.
2 plays later, the shoe is on the other foot.
On his own 40-yard line to kick. McPhail is onside. Here's the snap. There's the kick, and it is blocked, and the ball is rolling wild. It drops down on the 15, 20-yard line. This is a mad scramble, and we can't tell who's got it yet. It's on the 20, and somebody's hurt on the play. And Dexterman may be setting up a pass, and it isn't. It's a handoff to Bass, Billy Bass, over center for about 5, going to the 15. Curtis in motion to the right. Dexterman back on a pass a run play, and he's electing to run. He's on the 15, and he goes to the 10, and it may be a first down. Dexterman on a pass or run play goes to the Bombers' 10. And it may be a first down. It'll Curtis in motion to the left, playing wide. He's playing well out there, and they're going to run it. And the handoff is to Billy Bass, and Bass goes to the 4-yard line before you stop, maybe 3. Billy Bass goes for a first down, and to the Bombers' 3, and this is the closest either club had been to scoring a touchdown this afternoon. And hear that crowd going out. Dexterman looks over the situation. There it is. And the pitch out is to Too Good, and he is thrown for a loss on the play of about a yard. Dexterman calling the shot for the Argos. And it's Too Good off tackle to his left this time. He's on the 5, and he is spilled on about the 2-yard line, right by the goalpost. As he fights to try and get over that goal line, it'll be Argos' 3rd and about 1 yard. And this is the tense moment. This is possibly the big moment of the ball game now, because neither club have been this close to scoring a touchdown all afternoon. And the Argos are going to attempt to run this 1 yard. So here we go. Dexterman looks over his offense situation, and it's a quarterback sneak, and he's over for a touchdown on a quarterback sneak. Volpe will go after his convert. Volpe hardly missed. Hardly ever missed. There's a snap. There's a kick. And it is no good. So the score remains 12-0 as Volpe misses that attempt convert. And the Toronto Argonauts are leading by a score of 12-0 in the third quarter.
In the third quarter for the Argonauts, Al Dexterbrun goes in on 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line. The Argos are in front 12-0. What did you think at that time about the gamble on 3rd and 1 on the goal line?
Well, Al came into the huddle, and he felt that he could get it over.
I mean, footing is a huge problem.
Oh, I know. But we had a pretty decent offensive line, and they felt they could get it over, and Al did. And
no, you missed the extra point on the play.
I did.
Yes. And that surprised you, didn't it?
After kicking the two field goals, that was the hard part. So the extra point I thought was routine. Well, I kind of went off the side of my foot a little and just skimmed the goalpost. I actually thought at first that it was good, but
was the offensive line, Nick, was the offensive line the best part of your football team that year? What was the best area of your team? What was it like that you could rely on?
I'd love to say punt return.
Yeah.
I think the O-line was good. We had a good backfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, we truly did have a good backfield. And I would say it was a well-balanced team.
Mm-hmm. That gamble on 3rd and 1, was this typical Frank Clare style? Did he gamble a lot, or was he a pretty safe coach?
He was a very safe coach. If anybody did the gambling, it was the quarterback. As I mentioned to you, he kind of left it up to us. If we felt we could do it, that was
so, I mean, that wasn't the coach's call at that point in time?
No, that was the quarterback's call.
Wow.
Well, he could have overruled him, but Frank usually didn't.
But going into the game, you had a shutout going on defense. I imagine Winnipeg was getting a little bit desperate in terms of as the game progressed going into the second half. They were probably starting to do things to do something to get some points.
Well, I'm sure they were. I can't recall, other than McPhail's long run, they didn't have any big plays.
Yeah.
And so I think we felt we could keep them contained.
So let's get back to the final moments of the 1950 Grey Cup.
Argos kicking off. Les Asker kicking off, and there it goes. It's coming down here, where it's taken by Sokola. He's on the 10, the 15, the 20, the 25. He's up to about the 35, the 40-yard line on the run back. Sokol, Andy Sokol, taking that kickoff. Ian Gibb is in motion to the right and forward, and Casey to the left, and Jacobs is back to pass. Here's the pass. It was almost intercepted. It is. And by Deckerbrand, he is on the 25, and he is tackled on the 25. Deckerbrand intercepts that pass on about the 40-yard line and runs it down to the Bombers' 23. Deckerbrand dropping back, and the handoff goes to Teddy Too Good. Off tackle to the left and goes for close to a first down. Too Good cuts inside. A gaping hole on the right side of the Bomber line. 2nd and 1. Handoff is to Too Good. Too Good fades to his left, and he is thrown for a loss by Ian Gibb. So Joe Kroll is back to kick. He's standing on about the Bomber 24-yard line, playing in the safety. Tony's playing deep. Here's the snap and the kick, and there it goes into the end zone. It's coming down out of Casey. Casey falls on it, concedes a point, and the score is...
The third quarter ends, Toronto 13, Winnipeg nothing. And early in the fourth, Petro, who is easily recognized, replaces Jacobs.
Waiting to get that ball. He's fitting back for a pass. Back to his 9. Tosses a long one down the field, and it's a beautiful catch by Bud Korchak up on the 43-yard line. Beautiful pass to Bud Korchak. Got it on the 43-yard line. Here they come. Petro in the quarterback slot again. Waiting for that ball. He gets it, gives it on a handoff to George McPhail, and McPhail is going over the far side. He broke away, and he's going down the far side of the field. Byron carries after him down on the 35, and he's down on the 20-yard line, but there was a horn on the play. A beautiful run by George McPhail.
Winnipeg lose on downs, but their line stiffens, forcing Toronto to kick after only a slight gain.
Comes Don Knowles is back here on the safety spot. Here's a kick, and it is partially blocked. It's bounding around there, and Argonauts fall on the ball. That kick was blocked, but it went over the line of scrimmage, and Argonauts fell on it on the 30-yard line. No yards is the penalty, so the ball is marched down, still going down there to about the 15-yard line.
Yes, it's Winnipeg's ball on the Toronto 15-yard line, and a great scoring chance. But Toronto stopped them on the 10, and then...
1950 Grey Cup Classic is over. There's the cheer from the 27,100 fans, most of whom stayed here right till the very finish. Fans are swarming onto that muddy gridiron. The goalposts are down at both ends, just cracking. The fans trying to get souvenirs of this 1950 Grey Cup game. They're battling for one goalpost is standing up out of the 4, and it is waving.
And so, with that 13-0 victory, the Grey Cup and the Canadian Football Championship return to Toronto Argonauts after an absence of 2 years. In 24 Canadian championships played, Argos are the winners for the 8th time, with this one the greatest Grey Cup winner of them all.
So the Argos beat the Blue Bombers 13-0 in the famed Mud Bowl in 1950. Nick, what was it like to win that Grey Cup in your home stadium, Varsity?
It was the thrill of a lifetime, John. You know, as a player, you look back now and realize how much it meant to you. At that time, I mean, we were just ecstatic, as a bunch of guys would be, to win the Grey Cup. Right now, looking back, you know, it means even more.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, you figure at that time, it's 1950, you've got 2 or 3 more Grey Cups in you, right?
Right, absolutely.
Tell me about the locker room feeling, Nick, because you and I were together in the 91 Grey Cup, and I still have certain memories, like the guys that were there and the interaction with the players. Did you have certain moments where the Grey Cup was actually passed around and you had a chance to...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the funny part of it is we've got a team picture that was kind of a classic picture, and it was taken under the Varsity Stadium. We were all sitting around and cheering and drinking. And what do you think we were drinking? 7-Up. That shows you how
Nobody could spring for the beer?
No, they never drank beer in the locker rooms.
Now, did they put the 7-Up in the Grey Cup, and you drank out of the Grey Cup, correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay, so that tradition began back then.
Oh, it was a tradition, yeah.
After the game, you're out on the streets of Toronto. What did it mean to win that Grey Cup for Toronto guys?
It felt wonderful.
I mean, how big was the party?
We always had parties, win or lose, I guess. But no, it was pretty exciting and meant an awful lot to us.
And football back at that time meant more to the people of Toronto than what it means right now, like in terms of their enthusiasm.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was headlines, front page, the whole front page of the Telegram would, you know, Argos win Grey Cup.
Did you have a parade?
Yes, we did have a parade.
Did you go right down Yonge Street, or whereabouts did you have your parade? Do you remember?
God, I can't even remember where we.
No, you had to go down Yonge Street.
Yeah,
it was Yonge Street.
Yeah.
City Hall. What else?
Okay, let's get to the nitty-gritty. What kind of cash are we talking about? What was the Grey Cup bonus?
It was a game check, and that's all.
And a watch.
And a watch. That's the watch.
That's a beautiful watch, too.
How much did you make for playing football for the Argos in 1950?
I made $2,600. I was teaching high school at Port Credit Secondary School and coaching there, and I made $2,200 teaching, and I made $2,600 playing football.
So football was more lucrative than the day job.
Absolutely.
And
put the two together, and it wasn't bad.
No, you didn't go.
And the watch still works, Nick.
And it still works. Good old Bulova.
And you didn't spend all that money in one night, right, Nick?
No.
You stretched that out for quite a while.
Right. I had a car, and I was able to buy a car, and when I got married in '52, moved into a house. So that was pretty good in those days.
Well, for 2 field goals, Nick Volpe was player of the game in 1950. And here is the game ball. This is the game ball from us to you, but it's really back to you because you've had the game ball from the 1950 Mud Bowl in your possession since that day.
Yeah, and it's really nice. My son, who's a pretty good artist, put a little diagram on it, and I got all the players to sign it. And so that's quite a memento.
Nick, when I look at this, I always thought previously these type of footballs were more like a rugby football, but they're not. This is the exact same diameter as a regular football that we see today.
Absolutely. This is the old J5V football, and it could stand a little more air probably, but, you know, that's a pretty good looking football.
Well, it is, and I was under the same impression. This is a ball that was used in Canadian football until 4 or 5 years ago.
That's right. Same ball. The only trouble was that this was the only ball they used during the game.
That's right,
and
isn't
that's
it?
why it got so slippery and wet.
So how long did it take to dry that thing out?
Oh, jeez.
Weeks.
Well, that was sitting around. The kids used to take it out and kick it around until they realized it was a Grey Cup ball, and then they wouldn't.
But during the game, they didn't have, like in a regular CFL game, you have 20, 30 footballs, and every play they almost changed the football.
I think they had 2.
Is that right?
I think they had 2.
That is amazing.
The Argonauts and Nick Volpe, what happened in 1951? It wasn't a dynasty, was it?
No. I think we got knocked out the first round of the playoffs, but, you know, I'd like to forget those years. And then we won again in '52, so that wasn't too bad.
Now, was this time, where were you in your career? How many years had you been playing football?
I didn't play that long. 49, 50, 51, 52, and then I was on the coaching staff in '53, and I helped coach Toronto Balmy Beach, and they were Argos Farm Club in that day. In fact, we played them in a playoff game, and I'm not sure whether it was 50. I think it was 1950, because the Ontario Rugby Football Union winner used to play off with the winner of the Big Four, and then they would go on into the Grey Cup.
Now, were you a position coach or the head coach?
I was position coach.
Position coach,
yeah.
And what did you coach? The kickers, the safeties, the same position that you played?
I coached quarterbacks.
Oh, quarterbacks.
Quarterbacks and halfbacks.
Excellent.
Nick, you've never been very far away from the game with the Argonauts again these days after a career working in television as well. You've never been very far away from football since 1950, have you?
No, I haven't. Either coaching on radio or TV. Spent 15 great years with CTV and Pat Marsden and Leif Pettersson and Mike Wadsworth, and we had a great time. And when I retired from education in '88, Ralph Sazio offered me a job, and I started. I retired June 30th, and I started July the 1st with Argos in '88, and I've been with them
there
since.
ever since.